It is that time now once again, for getting lumped up with my friends. It's RockerMike and Rob that you should know, and you'll find them here on the Rock Show. Ooh, yeah, on the Rock Show.
Hello, people. Welcome to a special episode of The Rock Show, and this is Beatles Get Back review, the great documentary by Peter Jackson, and also Mike is reading the new Lou Reed's book, and he'll have a review for you after we'll do the Beatles. But let's also talk about this Beatles documentary. Supposedly, this was the thing that led up to the band breaking up. Supposedly, the later rumors.
Yeah. How you doing today, Rob? All right?
Pretty good, man. Good morning.
Good. All right. Yeah, I mean, this has been the biggest, media thing for the last week or two. The Get Back documentary about a documentary. It's really what it is. Okay. By Peter Jackson, who we all know did Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. He makes these big epic films. He made this 8.5 hour long documentary about the Let It Be documentary movie, using all these outtakes that he was made available to. I think Paul McCartney was involved, and a lot of other people were involved with putting this together as well. It's amazing. If you're a casual fan of the Beatles, it's watchable, because just to see the interaction between them is interesting. And of course, you're looking at it 50 years ago. You're seeing John and George still alive. You're seeing them young. They're still in their late 20s. Okay. It's hard to imagine that, seeing it now 50 years later. But for a big Beatles fan, which I consider myself to be, what's really interesting is seeing how they can pull songs out of the air. McCartney sitting down, dicking around, and coming up with "Let It Be." Like how? You know what I mean? Where does that?
Funny, none of them were into this song. One of the biggest hits, and these guys are not into it. They're like, fuck this.
Yeah. I mean, look, at this point, they had the White Album was completed a year earlier, less than a year earlier, and they were almost done at that point. And they went into the Let It Be. Ringo had left already at some point before the Let It Be sessions and came back. And I think between John and George, Paul was kind of like the only guy that was serious.
Yeah.
John is a clown. Okay. Everything is a joke with that guy, which personally, when I watched all 9 hours of it, 8.5 hours of it, I said to myself, if I had to work with that guy in the studio, I'd punch him in the face, because he's never serious. He's never serious at all. And, it's good to joke around. It's good to joke around and have a good time. I mean, they're young. That's fine. But there's a time and a place, and you got to knuckle down and try to figure out this stuff. And he just was constantly just fucking around. That was his personality, and I guess that's okay. But that had to be hard to work with somebody like that a little bit. Okay. And if you remember, when they were talking amongst themselves with some other people, it might have been Linda, I forget, some of the producers of the Let It Be movie, and the guy who owned the studio and all that stuff. They were saying how they hardly even wrote together anymore at that point. Okay. Even though the songs were credited Lennon and McCartney, it really was like a separate thing, because they had stopped touring a couple of years before and really became a studio band. And I guess when you do that, you don't really write together anymore. You write when you can at home, and then you bring it to everybody. It isn't like when you're touring and you're working together on a song and you have that closeness. It just was different by then. But even with that, Rob, I mean, it's amazing The music that just came out of them.
Mike, that's what you read the words. The music that came out, they were making this in the wind because they needed to do a special, whatever. Maybe for the studio, they need to do a special. They haven't done a concert. They want to have people come in. They had this vision, and Paul McCartney was like just playing and putting songs together and doing it. I thought that was kind of impressive.
Well, in the first episode, if you notice, probably even more than in the last two, because it's 3 parts. He was almost like a drill sergeant a little bit. Okay, at moments. And you need a guy like that in the band, and I get it. Borderline kind of dickhead, really. Okay, the way he was talking to George. Now he had he's said a million times that he has the utmost respect for George and his playing. But
George fucking left.
George at the end of the first part, he's out. He quits, and they have to have a sit down at one of their houses and discuss it. They said it didn't go well, but then he comes back anyway. And right before he left, it was interesting because you hear him say like, you only need one guitar player here. You just need one guitar player. And I'm like, oh shit, man, he's gonna leave.
What do you think about this guy when they brought in Billy Preston?
Well, Billy Preston was the 5th Beatle. I mean, anybody that knows the Beatle history, they couldn't have done those later albums without him. Guy came in, did his business, great piano player, sat there with a smile on his face. He was probably high, and just like, whatever. And I will say this too. You know who I think was stoned during the whole fucking thing? Ringo.
Of course.
Yeah.
Dude,
I mean, he
just got the stupid look in his face, and then he's
he's high. He's totally high, and actually at that point, he was drinking too, and they might have downplayed how much he was drinking, because I know at that point in Ringo's life, like the woman you saw him with was his wife, Maureen.
Yeah.
Okay, Starkey, and they broke up a few years later, but he was drinking a lot at that point and messing around and stuff like that. But he was drinking a lot. I think they showed him a couple of times with a glass. Maybe there was beer or wine in it or something. I don't know what it was, but he was definitely out of it.
Oh, yeah. He just got the.
But you know what? That's okay. I mean, the guy wins the Patience of the Year award just for being there and being able to just do these songs over and over and over and.
That was, I think, what's the hard part about watching episode 3. They just kept rehearsing. It was like, wow, man. It's like when Paul McCartney.
That's how you make an album.
I'm in love for the first time, and he's trying that lyric, and he keeps singing it. He keeps repeating it, and him and Lennon are going back and forth with the verses, and it was pretty incredible to see that. In the first episode, it's like these 4 guys just hanging out, talking.
What else I thought was really fascinating was some of the songs that they were working on that didn't make the album.
Yeah.
Okay. Like what ended up being on John Lennon's solo album, Give Me Some Truth. Mm-hmm. Okay. Which is a great song. But they actually worked on it as a Beatles song, but it obviously never got done. It just was left for later when Lennon used it when he went solo. Also with George Harrison, Isn't It a Pity? Mm-hmm. Because that ends up on All Things Must Pass.
Yep.
Okay, his solo record. If you remember too, that they actually were working on Let It Be, and it all falls apart. Okay, see, like what you don't see at the end of that documentary is how they practically shelved it. They had the masters. George Martin produced it, and they just didn't want to put it out, and they gave up on it and recorded Abbey Road first. And if you remember, our Phil Spector show we did, John Lennon approaches Phil Spector with the masters of everything they recorded and said, "Can you do something with this?" And he said, "I'll try." And that's the Let It Be record that everybody knows. Okay, and McCartney didn't like it. McCartney didn't like how it sounded. He didn't, particularly the long and winding road. He didn't like all the choruses that Spector put on it and built it up and produced it. He wanted it to be like a simple piano ballad. That's the way he envisioned it.
But Let It Be turned out to be one of their biggest hits.
Well, not Let It Be. I'm talking about the Long and Winding Road on that album.
Oh, okay.
He didn't like Let It Be. I think he was satisfied with the song Let It Be, but as a whole, the album Let It Be, he really wasn't satisfied with the Spector production. But they don't even talk about Phil Spector at that point because he wasn't in the picture yet.
But the album did pretty good. You know, it was one of the very well-received albums.
Yeah, it's one of that. There's no such thing as a bad selling Beatles album. It doesn't exist. All right, so all their albums did well. Sometimes I in the whole history of the Beatles, I just kind of wish that they didn't end with that album because it's not an album that I go to all that much. This is my opinion. You know, some people love that album. I like it a lot, but there's some songs on there I just, skip. Like the Long and Winding Road, I can't listen to that song.
Yeah.
It's too sappy. Ooh, watch your COVID right there, man.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
I said watch your COVID. You said watch my cocaine. You know
what I thought? What do you think of Yoko Ono just being there, like sitting next to them?
You know, they made at one point they're all saying how they have to accept Yoko because John and her are together and they're in love and they want to be together with each other every second. And I think that kind of flies in the face of maybe what the people have thought for the last 50 years that she broke them up. Okay. But I'll be straight with you. If it was me, she'd be very distracting. All right. Because she's sitting there in all black, like she's at a funeral. Okay. Really not doing anything. Okay. Getting up once in a while, moving around, giving John Lennon a piece of gum, something like that. And I'm kind of like, why are you there? But Linda was there too.
Yeah, but she wasn't sitting right.
Yeah, she stayed out of the way.
Stayed out of the way. She took pictures, but this one was like right on top. I would have been like, if I was one of the band, say, you know what? Take a fucking walk.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be like, you can't have her right in front of us like she's the audience. It's too distracting. But I don't know if, the whole thing of her breaking up the Beatles. No, I think they had problems, before that. It wasn't her.
They definitely had, because they even made a comment, people are going to think we broke up because Yoko was sitting at the top of an amplifier or something.
Yeah, right. They were even saying that, yeah, which wasn't true. I mean, but keep in mind, too, they recorded Abbey Road right after this, okay, and would release it before Let It Be. And they had, if you remember, they were working on the George Harrison song Something.
Yeah.
At one point, he brings that out. They end up using that on Abbey Road. And, I mean, if you think of the songs on Abbey Road, like Here Comes the Sun, Something, okay, what else is on? I mean, top of my head, I can't remember the whole thing. But it's like they wrote a whole other album after that was put to the side. Could you imagine?
Pretty impressive, man.
I wish they made a movie about that. How they recorded Abbey Road real quick and put it out. And I like Abbey Road. There's some great songs on there, but Let It Be, they just couldn't get it together. And Peter Jackson, I kind of feel could have made it a little shorter. What do you think?
He could have, but you know what? He likes to take
That's what he does.
He's just like that. He's one of those guys that like to take something and make it longer than it is.
Yeah.
That's just the way he does it.
Yeah. And I don't know. Have you ever seen the Let It Be movie?
No, I've never seen it.
Okay. It's a lot of that same footage, but from different angles and different outtakes. And you do get to really kind of see how they were not getting along so good. This stuff showed them in a little bit of a happier light, despite some of the stuff that they did show of the negative. But and that in itself kind of punches holes in the whole thing about them fighting through the hole. There was always stories they were, at blows with each other basically over this record and fighting in the studio, but that wasn't really true. They just like it was more of a slow breakdown than a hot breakdown. You know what I mean? They tried to make a they were trying to do a TV show that was being discussed. If you remember, that fell apart. Okay, and then they didn't know
the TV special fell apart. They couldn't even do it.
Yeah, they couldn't do it. They couldn't get it done in time. It was just so hard working on these songs all day long. You couldn't even get a TV show together. Then they were trying to figure out what kind of live thing we would do, which brings it to the third part, okay, where you get to see all the stuff on the roof. I mean, that's epic. You know what I mean? Back then, that was pretty ballsy kind of move to do.
What I like is like how patient those cops were. Right, they were there talking to them and then telling them and then smiling and the cops like, can you tell them to turn off the amps and all this other stuff? Because there's at one point that I think there must have been a power failure up there because you see Leonard struggling to try to get his
they turned the PAs off and they were just going with their amps or something like that. Yeah, and they probably couldn't hear too good. But and people, because of the angle of the building, this was just like a typical London block, all the buildings together, one after another, kind of like in New York. And you couldn't see them if you were down on the street. All right, unless maybe if you were far off and you had clear shot. But you could
people that knew who they were that would say, "Oh, this is the Beatles." I like the one lady. I don't like him. I was in my slumber.
They interrupted my sleep.
I was like, what time is it that you're sleeping so
I know. I was thinking the same thing. This was like 2:00 in the afternoon or something, I think. Whatever it was during the day. But then you had the one guy who had to be probably in his 60s at that point. Okay. And he says, "Oh, I like the Beatles." Yeah. And the guy asked him, "Would you let your daughter marry one?" He's like, "Sure, they got money."
The people on the street were funny, man. They were asking questions. They asked like these two girls about Yoko and John. And
what do you think of that?
It's his choice, blah, blah, blah. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Nobody really, dumped on him too much. You had the guy across the street that was pissed off because they put a camera on his building or something. Yeah. He probably wanted to get paid.
Is there a camera? There's no camera. They go, no, there's no camera.
There was a camera there, man.
It's great.
Because you see the angle from across the street of them. Of course, there's a camera there. I like
the way they did it. And then the other concern was the weight on the roof. Remember?
Yeah, they were concerned it wouldn't hold all the equipment. I mean, could you imagine if they went through the roof? But they hadn't, and if you think how big that was, they had not played live for like 3 years, something like that. Okay. And they go out and they just do this thing on the roof and traffic goes to a halt. People are out watching, listening, trying to figure out where it's coming from. Most people knew because they knew Abbey Road Studios was right there. So they knew it had to be there. But people were like, "Oh, is that the new Beatles song?" Because they never heard it. They never heard it.
It's pretty amazing, and just like the way they did it, and even when the cops came, the cops really didn't throw them out. They didn't
want to. Yeah, they didn't want to break their chops about it too much. But I guarantee you, they were getting complaints because they were saying we can hear you all the way from another street that's far away. They named the street like Compton
they would
Street.
Say we got about 30 complaints. Yeah. We got 30 complaints.
30 complaints. Yeah.
I was like, do you understand which band you're stopping? You're complaining about? You
idiots,
the Beatles.
I know. Some people just
got. The cops are there, but then almost like the sergeant, the head cop, come and he was pretty nice. All right, they're on the roof. All right, let me go up there. Let me check it out.
They were young. They were young guys, probably in their 20s. Those cops, they were probably fans. See, they were Karens even back then, Rob.
Yeah. That lady that was sleeping, that lady, that was definitely a Karen.
Oh, absolutely. And 30 people that complained, they were Karens too.
Yeah, it was funny, man. It was just like, wow, man. But
Um,
overall, I thought it was a pretty good done project. I thought it was beautifully remastered. They fixed it out of footage. And the thing that they didn't have footage for, and they just had the voice, they would put pictures in and do all kinds. So I thought it was very well done with all that.
There wasn't that much of that. They had a lot of footage with the sound. And I appreciated that he didn't really use any footage from the Let It Be movie. It was different angles, different takes, different. You know, I think there was once or twice he used something that might have been in Let It Be. Now, what I'm hoping is that with all this doing well, that somebody puts out a proper release of Let It Be, because it has not been released since VHS times.
Wow.
It's never been mastered on DVD in any real way. You can get it, but it's like a transfer copy. So I hope somebody goes ahead and does it, because it's an interesting. I haven't seen Let It Be in probably about 25, 30 years, but it's a great film, because it just like this shows how everything was made. That did too, but even before. So it was kind of like, you know, it just was cool. You know, they used to play it on MTV once in a while, the movie or clips of it, you know, and has the stuff on them on the roof and basically a lot of the same footage, but from different angles. I just hope somebody does that. There is a book related to this Peter Jackson film, though.
There is?
Yeah, there's like a coffee table size book. I was looking at it. Amazon had it, I think. So you could, I don't know if they're planning to put this all out in a box set. Are they?
I have no idea. They might, but because right now it's available. So if you have Disney Plus,
you can watch it.
Available. You know, you can just buy it.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like if you want to have a physical copy, like a DVD. Like putting it out on Blu-ray.
You know what? They might do it. I can't see why they wouldn't do it. But
nobody gives a fuck about that anymore, right? Like no one cares. Everything is just like if you stream it, right? No one really. Yeah, I'm old school, you know. I like to have a copy.
You can stream it with Disney Plus. You can stream it as much as you want. That's the other thing, you know.
Yeah, and it's not going anywhere. It's going to stay on that app, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just wondering if they're going to come out with some kind of box set, something with the book, maybe. It'd probably be $200 or something, you know. But still, you know, if you're a big Beatles fan, you'll invest in that. Everything that comes out with the Beatles does really well.
You know what? You know what might happen too with that? It might just maybe Peter Jackson will redo Let It Be and refilm it or do it.
I don't know. Maybe that would be cool. You know,
like a brand new, total brand new movie. You know.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll give it 4 stars. What about you?
I definitely give it like 4 star. Even I even consider it like 5 star because it was damn
that's what I mean. Like
I gotta give it a full 5 star. It was excellently done. I
would give it 4 out of 4 or 5 out of 5, however you want to rate it. It's a little tedious. It's not. I want to say it's not the easiest thing to watch, but even with that, watch it.
It's fascinating just to see.
It's fascinating, yeah.
Because I also like when they had the hidden mics and those talks that they had. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange how they did that. What made somebody want to do that? You know, and say it's okay. I don't know. I guess why not, right? Yeah, but you hear them talking in the kitchen, you know, and it's like okay, and they're talking about George and all that. It's like, well. You know, they had a problem there. They definitely did.
They had a problem. They had to fix it because they knew they couldn't do it without George. You needed George there as much as whatever was going on. All 4 of them in a room. It's like holy shit, you got magic. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You couldn't just bring another musician. Like, all right, stop playing George's part. It wouldn't be the same.
No, you couldn't. George had a particular style. If you know your Beatles, you know George is playing, when he's playing.
Oh, yeah.
And
I just think Paul McCartney was a pain in the ass. He was a fucking drill sergeant.
He was a drill sergeant, but again, it was something that probably needed to be done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to do anything because Lennon was a clown.
Yeah, that's what everybody said, that they needed him to be there just because you needed him.
Yeah, but I also understand how George felt the way he did. I mean, he had all these songs, everything that ended up on All Things Must Pass, really was stuff that he had presented to the Beatles in one point or another, almost everything. Okay.
The funny thing, or any of those songs could have easily
been one.
In any, like the White Album, or it could have been in anything.
Yeah. That's why All Things Must Pass, in my opinion, is the best Beatles solo record, because it's really like a Beatles album in a lot of ways, but it's just it's like the George album,
Yeah.
The Quiet
Which
Beatles.
was a fantastic album if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. And we did a good podcast on that too. We did a good show on that last year.
Yeah.
Or about a year ago, right?
Yeah, it's definitely over a year. So right now, Mike, let's talk about your you've been reading a book by Lou Reed. Do you got the book with you?
Yeah. I got this book called Perfect Day. Okay. And it's about the life of Lou Reed for a certain period of his life. It's written by Bettye Kronstad. Now, Bettye Kronstad is Lou Reed's first wife. And he was with her from 1968 to 1973. They only married at the very end of their relationship, but she was with him during that period. Now, that's a very interesting period, but it's called Perfect Day, an intimate portrait of life with Lou Reed by Bettye Kronstad. Came out in 2016, and so it's 5 years ago already. Now, I'm just going to say I've been in contact with Bettye a little bit, and she's working on some projects related to this. Trying to get her on the show. She's receptive to it. Let's hope it can happen. But I wanted to talk about this book because it's a very interesting read, because it's about a period in Lou Reed's life that's not well documented, and that's kind of like the period from 1969, 68, 69, when the Velvets were breaking up, to when he gets his fame with Transformer, Walk on the Wild Side, and then the following album called Berlin, okay, which is a whole story amongst itself. Bettye was a young girl. I think she was about 8 years younger than him, and they met. I believe it was like in a hospital, like he was visiting a friend and she was working there. And he actually sees her and says something real, like, you'd probably be Me Too'd for this today. But he just was like, oh, what do you look good. You look normal. What are you doing here? And she's like, well, like I am normal, And then he actually grabs her ass when she goes in the elevator. All right, so
man, that would totally be a Me Too.
You'd get Me Too'd for that. But what's interesting about this book is,
but what's funny? It's not Me Too if they like you.
Certain people get away with things. Yes. Okay. We won't. Let's not get into that. But you're right. But
because she ended up marrying him.
Well, yeah. Well, she did. She did. After a few years of kind of being with him, and as he got his life back together. When he left the Velvets, he actually went back to Long Island to be with his parents.
Wow.
Okay. And he was only about 26, 27, something like that. And he went back to Long Island to be with his parents. He worked for his father. His father was an accountant. And Bettye was with him, and he was writing, and he was trying to figure out how to go forward again with his music. At one point, he decides to give up music and write strictly poetry or literature, and that doesn't go over too well. People didn't really respond to it. He had some poetry readings that did not go well. What's that? Well, I mean, I think they viewed him more as a rock star than a poet.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm a tremendous Lou Reed fan. Everybody knows that, and I consider him as important a songwriter as Bob Dylan or even Paul McCartney. Okay.
Wow.
I think that what he did to rock and roll music in his words, his lyrics. It's always been more about the lyrics with Lou Reed than the music, but the music has been good too. He's got some great songs just musically, but interestingly, what he was trying to do was bring this kind of like street level lyrics into rock and roll. Talk about stuff that was never talked about before, like heroin. Okay. And homosexuality in a way that was never talked about in a pop song or, a rock song of any kind. And songs like, Waiting for My Man, which he wrote with the Velvet Underground, transformed music. Okay. But, he had a lot of demons. He had a lot of demons at this period and through the 70s, really, till he would try to clean himself up in the 80s. And eventually he would do that. But, he would battle alcoholism was a main problem. In fact, that was a big detriment of Bettye and his relationship was his drinking. People would say, oh, he was shooting dope and all. It wasn't so much that. It was really the drinking. The guy would start drinking scotch at noon. Okay. And go all night, and, she would kind of have to be not just a girlfriend or, a wife, but like a caretaker.
Yeah.
And she didn't like that. She wasn't used to that. It had to be hard. Now, this is a period, like I said, like it's not discussed much, that 69 through 72 period. He does have one solo album that he made, his very first record, just called Lou Reed, that came out. And it really was kind of like a bunch of Velvet Underground songs that were never released that he reworked into an album. And I actually like that record. It's not, it's not considered like amazing or anything, but I do like that solo record a lot. I do listen to it. But then he would come out with Transformer, okay, in 72. And that was the album produced by David Bowie. And, Bettye goes into a lot of the detail on that, how his, because that was his rise to fame with that. When Walk on the Wild Side came out, that was a top 40 hit. It was played on the radio, but he never liked the song. He felt that this album produced by David Bowie, Mick Ronson in Bowie's band, had a lot to do with the sound of the album, the production as well, and the arrangements. And Lou felt that it wasn't his record. Okay. And she goes into this a lot where she talks about how, he was so miserable about that. Okay. And, two things that kind of I got that I took away from this book that definitely affected me was like the song Perfect Day. Okay. Off of Transformer, that ballad, it's such a perfect day. I'm glad I spent it with you. It's all, okay. And, I've had arguments with people over the years. I said, no, that's about a relationship. Okay. It's about some relationship, something. Okay. And people have argued with me and said it's about heroin, that he's singing about heroin. I'm like, I don't think it is. And I've heard him comment on it when he was alive. And he said, no, it's just about a relationship. But a lot of people believe this. They think it's about dope. Okay. Because he had
such a perfect day.
Yeah, but it's not. Because in the book, Bettye says it's about them. That they actually had a day in Central Park, where they did drink sangria in the park, like the lyrics says. And they went to the zoo in Central Park, like the lyrics say. Okay. So it's actually, he wrote that for her.
Damn.
Yeah. And that's, one of his most well-known songs, or off that album, at least. And people get the wrong idea of it. So I'm glad I was vindicated because I've always been saying, no, it's not about that. But the other thing was the Berlin album. And this is when everything really starts to go off the rails in their relationship. He started in the tour of Berlin. Now, Berlin was the follow-up to Transformer. Okay, it came out in 1973, produced by Bob Ezrin. And he had a hard time writing this record. He could not come up with anything after Transformer. He had writer's block in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So finally he writes this record, and he is singing it to her in their room, their apartment. I think they lived on the Upper East Side. And he's got an acoustic guitar and he's doing the songs, and she's listening to these words. And he used a lot of situations in her back history, okay, that ended up in the songs of Berlin. Okay.
Wow.
And, about having, there's that one song, The Kids on Berlin, which is about the whole album is a concept album. It's about a woman and a guy in a relationship. It's an abusive relationship. They beat the shit out of each other. Everybody's getting high, and she's got kids, and the authorities take the kids away because the woman is like really messed up on drugs and kind of a slut and, everything like that. Now, Bettye, he embellished everything. Bettye wasn't like that, but Bettye, she was taken away from her mother as a kid.
Wow.
So he used some stuff in her background, okay, to write this album. And she was put off by it. She did not like that. She felt you're airing my life.
My laundry.
My dirty laundry. Exactly. And he said, well, I've changed things around, and I've had a hard time coming up with anything to write about, and this is, it's not all just about that. It's about these other people. And, he makes this record, and it's one of his best albums. But when it came out following Transformer, which did very well, the critics killed Berlin. They killed it. Okay. And he went on tour, and Bettye would go on tour with him. Sometimes she used to do the lights. She was in charge of that. But it was really and then, they got married at one point, and then, it doesn't last long. It's got to be less than a year. And they get divorced, but she still is kind of with him. Okay. And finally, it just goes totally off the rails because he's totally miserable because no one gets Berlin. The critics, critics that he liked, that he got along with, were panning it. Okay. And it affected him, and it brought him more into drugs, more into drinking, especially.
Wow. Okay.
And it just finally, it finally fell apart. And, she went on with her life, and she mentions in the book how all the books of Lou Reed never totally got it right, and so I was really glad when I came. I've read about probably 5 or 6 books on Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground over the years, and this is one that went under my radar. I didn't know about it, and it came out 5 years ago. Perfect Day, an intimate portrait of life with Lou Reed by Bettye Kronstad. That would be Bettye Reed, his first wife. Now, Lou would go on and, after Bettye, he got the next major relationship you hear about is the transgender person, Rachel.
Yeah.
that he was with during Coney Island Baby and Rock and Roll Heart and Street Hassle album and all that. You know, that's a whole. You can write a book just about that. And then he would get married again to Sylvia around 1979, 1980. And then he married Laurie Anderson much later in the 2000s. And then he passed away in 2013. And, you know, Bettye wanted to write this book. She said she was in the book, she says how she was, you know, when she found out that he died in 2013, all these feelings came back to her. And, wow. You know, she felt she had to deal with that. And then reading other books over the years, she never spoke to him again. Okay. You know, there's an incident where they're in a hotel room and he's very abusive to her. And she throws a glass of milk in his face. And that's the last time she ever sees him.
Wow, and that's it. They never talked again.
Never talked again, according to the book. Now, you know, I'm hoping we can get Bettye on. We can discuss all that. She'd be a fascinating guest. Yeah. I'm working on that. But just as far as the book goes, you don't even have to be a fan of Lou. It's a great read. It's a great read about relationships and how people will go to all kind of the extents people will do for each other. Even within an abusive relationship, you know, he didn't hit her too much. It might have been like 2 occasions or something like that, but he was mentally abusive to her. And you know, she stayed with him. It was always like the way she writes this book is she would talk about things going on, and then she would kind of have in italics. She would have like what she was really thinking at that moment. Okay. And it's an interesting read because it's kind of like you see how somebody will say something to their partner, but really think like the opposite, almost like fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm saying this just to go on in the conversation, but I'm really thinking like, you know, you're doing too much drugs or you're drinking too much. Like, you know, and she kind of does the book like that. And I like that style. I liked it. You know, because it kind of shows that we all do it. You know, if you've ever been in a relationship, you know how sometimes you got to say things just to, you know, to appease that person.
So what will you rate the book?
Oh, out of 4 stars, I would give it 3.5.
3.5, not bad.
So 3.5 out of 4. Read. Yeah, very good read. You know,
and you can probably find the book on Amazon, right?
Amazon. Yep. It's on Amazon right now. It's a good stocking stuffer. It was actually on sale when I got it. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to see the Beatles documentary, you can buy the Disney Plus channel.
Disney Plus app.
I think it's $7.99 or $8.99 a month, or you could get the whole thing for $79.99 for the whole
Disney
year.
Disney has all the Star Wars movies, all the other children's stuff, and you know all these shows.
You get to see all the Marvel. You get to see all the old Disney stuff. You get to see all the new like Aladdin, all the films that they turn cartoon into real life film. Dumbo. They got everything on there. It's a great app. And they had some great original Marvel shows, and they got some original Star Wars that they do it, like the Book of Boba Fett is coming out at December 29th. But you can watch the Beatles documentary, maybe get it at one time, and 1 month. And if you just want to watch the documentary, it's $8.99, and this is on Disney Plus. But I think it's totally worth it. I've been a member of Disney Plus for the last. For 2 years or 3 years.
You got it as soon as it came out. I remember.
Yeah. And another thing, they also have a special that if you want for $13.99, you can get Hulu, Disney Plus, and you can also get ESPN Plus for a low price of $13.99. So you get like almost $25 of freaking of stream for $13.99, which is not a bad price.
No, not at all. Not at all. And again, the book, Perfect Day, An Intimate Portrait of Life with Lou Reed by Bettye Kronstad. Amazon has it. Anywhere that's got books for sale, check it out. It's a great read. I'd give it 3.5 out of 4. Hopefully, we're going to get Bettye on the show. I'm hoping. And we'll have a good interview with her. And there's just to mention, there are a couple other really good books about Lou Reed, too, like written by Victor Bacris. A Life with Lou Reed, I think it's called, something like that. But if you're on Amazon, you can see there's quite a few if you're interested in his life. And also there's a great collection called Pass Through Fire, which is a collection of all his lyrics.
Ooh.
Okay, I have that, and I have it autographed.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I did meet the man one time.
All right, Mike. So how can people get a hold of you? How can they reach out to you?
You can find me on a lot of social media, RockerMike212 on Instagram, RockerMike212. You could find me on Clout Hub and MeWe under RockerMike. You could find me on Facebook under RockerMike, because they won't let me be RockerMike, RockerMike. And also we have the Rock Show podcast group page. A lot of stuff on there. We always have like a song of the day and song of the night, and we try to make it interesting. Got a lot of people contributing now. It's been pretty good with that. That's the Rock Show podcast group page on Facebook.
And I gotta send a shout out to the podcast Hate Bartender. I was just on a future episode that's coming out, and the host Anthony was a great guy. He sent me a box of swags, shirts and stuff. So if you're looking for a new podcast to listen to, Hey Bartender is a great podcast. It's about bartenders in the industry from all around the U.S., from everywhere. So It's a very cool little podcast if you want to listen to. And we also got upcoming, we got a part 2 of the Carl DeMarco interview that we did in
Cardinaro, Rob.
Cardinaro.
Right.
Cardinaro. I'm almost correct. Cardinaro that we did on Wednesday, and it's part 2. And this is after he went and met the son of Sam, which was interesting.
That's on the Conspiracy 420 show. It'll be up soon.
And other than that, people would like to say thank you, fuck you, and see you next time.
And remember,
have a good one, Mike.
All right, you take care.
The only podcast you will hear that will be music to your ears. You'll learn about bands you love or may not know, and it's only here on The Rock Show. Ooh, yeah, on The Rock Show. Ooh, yeah, on The Rock Show. Don't tell your friends and everyone you know. Let's get lumped up on The Rock Show.